Hey, it's Phil, Chop back another video, and today I wanted to talk about Ace and where it's at as a game. I also wanted to address some of the comments in my previous video in Infinite Magic Raid versus Ace, because I think a lot of people had some valid criticisms, and some people were a little aggressive about doing so, but I just wanted to talk about it. This isn't like lash back or anything like that. I also wanted to talk about my channels. What I'm going to be doing in the future is the daily uploads for Ace going to continue, things like that. Let's jump into it. So first things first, I'm going to talk about the channel stuff real quick here. I've been creating daily content for Ace since the beginning of my channel on December 13th was like my first video I posted. Maybe it was December 11th, but I've literally not missed a single day, and it's been about 5 months so far. I plan on continuing that schedule. I plan on making update videos for the updates, any new rotation, and the daily uploads, of course. All of that's going to continue. But I do have a second channel already. I've been creating daily content for Infinite Magic Raid. I'll leave all the channels in the comments down below, in the description down below. And I'm also going to be creating a new channel for Diablo Immortal. I plan on hitting the game extremely hard when it drops June 2nd. I'm going to create daily content for the upcoming next couple of weeks in preparation of the launch. I'll be streaming the game, all that good stuff. That's a much more active game. I'll be able to stream it much more often, most likely. Problem with Ace and gacha games in general is that the game is generally just not a very active game. You're oftentimes watching multi-battles, and I don't like to stream multi-battles. I think it's a little bit more boring, personally, like even streaming it as well as watching it. And so I am going to be going ahead and streaming Diablo Immortal most likely a lot. I'll be going over RTA and Guild vs. Environment just as normal, but I will be pushing that very hard because I'll be joining either Chosen's or Darth Micro's guild because they plan to hit the game really hard, and I want to be in a group of players that's going to try for this game because, as many of you know, I'm a little bit of a tryhard when it comes to games in general. And I'm definitely that spreadsheet nerd. So that's all for the channel stuff. If you're interested, go ahead and check out the new channel. There's going to be a new video on Diablo Immortal by the time this video drops. It's going to be in the comments down below, and I'll link it there. And if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe to that channel. Now, what I really want to talk about in this video is all about Ace and the state of the game, because there's been I want to say there's a very low point for Ace. This is probably the lowest point Ace has been in as a game and a community as a whole since the beginning of the game. I've never seen it this low. Honestly, the game has generally been a positive community until about a couple of weeks ago, about a month in total. And there's obviously a few reasons for that. And obviously there's the future for the game. I don't think is a bad one at all. I want to get that one out of the way. I'm very positive about the game. But first I want to talk about like some of the comments that I've heard on the previous video and address a few of those before I generally just talk about my overall thoughts. And I want to start with people who were kind of invalidating what I was talking about in regards to Infinite Magic Raid and Ace in the last video by just calling me biased and leaving it at that. That's completely fine if you want to do so. You know, it is what it is. Every single person who has an opinion on a game is generally biased. It's impossible. I'm generally more of a positive creator and person when it comes to my opinions on things generally, especially in the game that I'm mainly covering. I generally have a positive perspective. I think that generally leads to success as well as just more enjoyment of the game. And a lot of people tend to have the opposite mindset. A lot of people tend to have the more negative, more pessimistic mindset. And so when I see your comment, I see extremely ragging on the game. And you see my comment, and for some reason, everyone thinks I'm a shill because I'm positive about the game. It's generally that difference in perspective that a lot of people think that I'm not being hard on the game or I'm not critical of the game, because I am just generally the opposite spectrum of a lot of people. And so that's where it comes in definitely a lot. And people just assume that it's all bias, it's all that. It is what it is, but there is a lot of criticism I have of this game, and there's a lot of criticisms where a lot of people just seem to have forgotten, or things that I've said at the beginning of the launch that have come completely true now in a few months. But there's a few other comments, and just kind of leading into our general topics of the things I think are issues with Ace. Some things that I saw in the comments are like, oh, auto battles take too long, the quality of life isn't there, the general balance updates and things like that aren't there, the game is buggy, the developers aren't, I guess, like there or nice or things like that. Those are all sort of the comments I have heard, and the game is just generally boring. So I want to talk about the general boring, and arena, of course, but I want to talk about generally the boring aspect of the game, because I think that's a very, very important thing, and honestly, everything else stems from this point. here's the thing. The updates there's not been a bad update, in my opinion. I don't think that there has been a bad update. Even the gear enhancement system, the execution wasn't very solid. There's a lot of things missing with that update, as I went over many times. But I think overall, it's a good update. I think that the fact that the system exists in the game is better than it was before, overall. Personally, obviously, some people have difference of opinions. Some people think it's the greatest system, and honestly, all the criticisms that we have about the system don't even matter. And some people think that the system is completely awful and it's ruined the game. I think it's generally a solid update, but it's missing in execution. That's kind of my perspective on that. But even the updates all before that have been good updates, in my opinion. It's just gotten better and better. But the community perspective in regards to this has been extremely negative. People think that the game is getting worse. And obviously that's a personal opinion. It is what it is. I don't see it, but you're free to have your own opinion. But overall, the game is boring because the game is too easy. This is something I literally have said since day one of soft launch. I have said that the game is too easy. People will complete the content. You need to kind of remove the resources, the amount of rewards people get as free-to-play players. You need to make the dungeons harder. You need to get more characters, something. I'm not sure what the right mode or the right way to handle this. All these are just things I'm thinking about at the top of my head. But what I was saying is somehow make the game harder. A good example of this is like Infinite Magic Grade. A lot of people are talking about how the game is better than Ace because the game is grindy. I feel like I have a lot to work for and things like that. Well, guess what? You don't get as many resources in that game as a free-to-play player as this game to allow you to progress as quickly. The dungeons are much harder. The campaign's much harder. The summons have less rates. All those are conducive of a longer paced game, and as a result, you are not bored until you get to the end game. But once you get to the end game in that game, just like in Raid Shadow Legends, which also takes a long time, in this game, in Ace, you get to the end game in about 2 months. In Raid, it takes you about, 7-8 months, based on some other free-to-play creators out there that make content on the game. I think if you play extremely efficiently and get lucky, 7 to 8 months isn't a bad time frame. But just when you get to Raid and the end game, it's the same thing. You're going to be farming dungeons. You're going to be farming your faction wars. It's no different. The only problem is it's very glaring in this game because a lot of people reach the end game very quickly. And what do I mean by end game in this game? Well, what I mean is you've completed Void Tower hard. You completed a majority of the stage 14 dungeons that you can. And then you've been farming dungeons every day. That's all you do, arena and dungeons. That is the end game. And that is the end game for Raid. And that is the end game for Infinite Magic Raid. That is what gacha games are in the end game generally, unless there's some sort of PvP game mode that's very, very interesting, or a guild versus environment or something like that, where there's a lot of places that you could use your units in the content, which is why RTA is coming. And guess what? Because everyone's in the end game, everyone's doing the same thing, everyone thinks the game is boring because the game is too easy. And this is causing a massive shift in community perspective. Due to the fact that everyone's in the end game, now everyone is like, okay, the game is boring. Due to the fact that they think the game is boring, they are more harsh on the game. It's very obvious. They had the same criticisms 2 weeks ago, but now that they don't have, things to complete, they're much more harsh. They move on. Completely valid. Obviously, if you're not enjoying the game, you should move on. And this is no different from what I've been saying this entire time. But I think that what's different is people are, for some reason, think the game got so much worse within a couple weeks. I will say that from the previous patch, there have been a lot of buggy type things in the game, and that is something completely different. And that is something that we talk about, but that is most recently in the recent patch, so about a week ago. Before that, people were complaining about the same things, but there wasn't really anything that was hugely worse about the game. It's just that people are starting to realize the inherent problem with Ace that I've mentioned since the beginning of the game, is that you reach the end game too early and it's boring at the end game, just as every other gacha game there is. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations in my stream talking about how, okay, when you all get to the end game, you're going to be bored, or when the player base gets to the end game, you're going to be bored. And I think this is what they should do, because the majority of people don't play PvP. And guess what? Everyone had the same argument against me because people were, I guess you could say, enamored by the game. They would say, oh, well, the end game is PvP. Oh, well, the end game is farming gear. Guess what? People are farming gear. People are playing arena just as it was 3 months ago, but no one's enjoying it because they've reached the end game now and they realize that that's not what they want to do. A majority of the player base doesn't want to do that. And so I don't think anything's new about any of this. Like, this is all something that I've talked about since the beginning of the game. So I don't understand where all this the criticism's coming from. Now, obviously, it's generally due to the fact that people are sitting here and they're realizing it. But there's a few problems in regards to Ace overall, outside of the fact that the game is too easy, that I wanted to address, as I said previously in the comment section, or in the comments below, or in the comments in my previous video. And that is, one, the arena is stale, and it's a boring meta. This is a valid criticism. Obviously, the arena is pretty stale. You can see here, I'm literally running Urzag. I'm full autoing it. We ended up losing this one, but this is just kind of how I ended up doing the battles. I just randomly throw gear on my units, run into battle, play my Urzag comp. If I lose, whatever. I don't manual the battles at all. It takes like 5 minutes per battle. This is absolutely a criticism you can make of this game. This game has a stall meta. It's very boring. I think Arena in general is boring across every single gacha game I've ever played. I've never found an Arena mode that I actually found interesting and I wanted to actually dive into every day. I found it interesting to build teams for it once, and then once that team kind of wins in Arena, I'm done with Arena. I run my same team for the rest of the career that I'm playing that gacha game. And so I don't know how you make Arena interesting. That's not something I can decide, because I don't know how to make an arena interesting for me. I don't think it's an interesting game mode. So that's kind of how I think of arena. And so, like, I don't really care, but I absolutely understand why people would be frustrated with this form of arena, because it is long, it is arduous, it is very, very tank centric, and that's completely valid. Now, another thing that people mention is auto battling. I don't like the fact that I just sit here and auto battle long. And yes, this game in general is a longer time frame in regards to running dungeons. People criticize, okay, well, you have queen runs at 4 to 5 minutes. Well, the fastest runs in the game on stage 14, assuming you're not running like an EFD to get Gemini comp, the fastest I've seen for like Ashe is like 1:45. And that's not general, usually about 2 minutes. So if you're running a 4-minute queen comp, it's only twice as slow as the fastest run in the game. Well, if you compare that to, let's say Raid, you could run a Spider 25 in 30 seconds. Twice as fast as a minute, or twice as slow as a minute. So you have to compare it within the realm of its own game. But if you want to say that the runs are long, that's a completely separate argument. But if you're comparing Queen to, if you're saying Queen runs specifically take long, well, actually, they're not that long in the grand scheme of the whole game. They're just long runs for this game. Ace in general has long runs, and that's a completely separate argument. And that is absolutely true. If you don't like longer runs, then you don't like longer runs. But for me, I don't really care. And the reason for this is, as long as it's within the realm of the game, I don't compare this game's run times to other games, because all that matters is when you're running runs, you're getting better gear. Well, you're competing against other players, at least in PvP. So as long as they're not running absurdly fast run times, then it's not a big deal for me, because I'm still competing at half the speed that people are. It's not like I'm competing at 1/10 of the speed that they are. I'm still competing at 1/2, which isn't that bad for me. I don't really care, because I'm able to use my energy every day. So that is absolutely fine with me. But I understand if people are annoyed at that. But you have to look at it from an Ace perspective, and that is just that Ace is a longer game in regards to running runs. Another part of that is multi-battles, and people want to have multiple multi-battles. Well, I guess you could have that, sure. I don't really see what the downside is for the developers, outside of like, okay, they want you to log in every day. And so I can't really make an argument against or for that. Obviously it would definitely exaggerate the gap between the whales and the free-to-play players 100%, because people would end up just multi-battling all night long if they could. So that is one argument against it. But that's sort of like a personal preference, such quality of life thing that is highly based upon like the actual health of the game, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to make that argument, so I'm not going to really talk about that too much. The last thing is like developers and the things like they're making worse updates. And that's the last thing I wanted to talk about really in this game, and then I'll go over my overall thoughts I think about Ace right now. Well, I don't think that the developers have made a single update that has been bad overall. I really don't. I think that the last update, when they nerfed Hakron, was good. I mean, it wasn't even a nerf in some cases, because Hakron is rampant in Ashe 12 and Ashe 14 now. So it's just changed the priorities of Hakron into different game modes. He's still one of the best for Void Tower Hard. He's still one of the best units in the entire game. and people complain about that. I think that the Edicris changes were nice. The Urzai changes, that's a while ago. The recent new content, yes, people don't like it that much, but it is new content. I like that update, even though it was slightly boring. I liked the recent update with a gear management system. All that stuff I like. I enjoy new characters, even if I wish that they were epics and elites more often. So I don't think there's been a bad update. It's just not what the players wanted per se. There are some updates that people are prioritizing over the others. Like, for example, a lot of people want to see new epics and elites over everything else. A lot of people want to see the quality of life changes, like the fix the gear enhanced system, fix Gemini, fix Gengalo, things like that, before they want to see other updates. And I will say that that is a matter of personal preference. I don't know if you could really talk about the health of the game, because right now, I will say this, is that the developers have been in lockdown. Whether that's not an excuse for having like a game drop in popularity or anything like that. It's just the reality of the situation. They haven't been able to update as frequently and as often as in depth as they would normally like to, which is why we've seen a drop off in interesting updates in the recent times, as well as they're working on RTA and Guild versus Environment. But I don't think that the developers are getting worse. This idea is all revolving around some argument that doesn't really factor in the reality of the situation. Now, whether the game is actually becoming less popular due to it, that's a separate argument entirely, but I don't think the developers are getting worse or they're not doing what we're asking for. That's a completely separate argument. Now, again, there's all sorts of things that people will say, and I will say, if you decide to comment on this video, go ahead and do so. I'd love to have conversations with you. I answer every single comment as long as you comment on the video itself. I literally answer every single one, or respond to them, but just keep it clean and less personal attacks or anything like that. I appreciate that, because I'd love to have a conversation with all of you. But yeah, I don't think the developers are getting worse. I just think that due to the fact that they're prioritizing certain things and they have limited resources, the updates and the things that we'd like to see are not there. And that is obviously a problem, but it's not due to the fact that developers are getting worse. And then overall on Ace, I think that the Ace is in one of its lowest points right now as a game, as a community, due to the fact that, well, not necessarily as a game, but as a community rather, as long as you exclude the bugs, which obviously have been rampant over the past couple days. So if they get those fixed, I'm completely satisfied with the game right now. I think the game is better than it was on global release. I think the game is better than it was on soft launch, which is all we can hope for when you're talking about patches in development. And I think that it has a good future for it. I think that RTA and Guild versus Environment are going to ignite life into the game. People talk about how they're bored. RTA is a perfect example of how you could fix that. Now, obviously, people are going to go into the comment section. They're talking about how they have to balance everything. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be crash, blah, 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 blah. I don't care what certain circumstance is going to happen that makes the game worse. What I'm saying is that RTA, if it's not crashing, right? There's always some circumstances where it won't work. Like RTA is going to be bad because it's not going to be balanced or whatever. I'm of the assumption, as I said earlier on in this video, I'm a very positive person generally. So when I think of RTA, I think of it working, first off. And I also think that the meta will be a lot different due to the fact that I think that they're going to have a very similar place as Summoner's War in regards to balancing it so that tank comps and things like that aren't going to be as rampant and therefore not as viable. And so overall, I think that RTA is going to be a good and healthy thing for this game. Same with Guild versus Environment, and I think that they're going to reignite new life because people are going to come back to play the content. And in regards to RTA, it's a PvP content, so people are going to play it every day. They're going to try to improve their characters. They're going to become the best, and generally, that's one of the only ways you keep people along for the ride when you're talking about endgame. There's not a single other gacha game that I really know that people stick around for a long time if it's just PvE content. Like, I don't know of any other game that people are excited to go for a gacha game and like, oh, I'd love to go grind dungeons for a bunch of hours so I can go, I don't know, finish another team comp for the same dungeon I've already done. There are some people like that, of course, but the majority of the player base is not. The people who stick around are just going to be for the competitive aspect, and RTA satisfies that, I think. And, of course, Guild versus Environment, if there's a leaderboards, also satisfies that type of aspect. So overall, I think that that Ace is, as a community, in one of its lowest spots. As a game, it's actually in a better spot than I think it was a few weeks ago to a month ago. except for the crashes. That is a big problem that they need to fix. And I do know that it's definitely on Ace's side. I've experienced it a lot. A lot of people have experienced it as well. And so I think for the future of this game, it's going to be great. We're going to have to see how RTA and Guild vs. Environment roll out. If they are poor launches and they do not end up performing well, that could be a big problem for Ace. And we'll have to see when that does happen. But I think that having a new streamable game mode and all that good stuff will be very, very fun. And so that's my overall thoughts on Ace so far. Again, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please keep it cordial. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But if you're going to start off your conversation by calling me biased, or you're going to invalidate any of my points, it's going to be hard to have a conversation with any of you, because we could just say the same thing to each other, and that's the end of the conversation. But that's the overall thoughts. If you do want to check out the Diablo Immortal, if you're excited for that game, like I am, and you're interested in a mobile ARPG, be sure to check out that third channel that I'm going to have in the comments down below. If you like Infinite Magic Raid, check out my second channel. And if you like Ace, stick around, subscribe to the channel, because I will still have the daily uploads on Ace. I enjoy this game. I think it's very fun. I have invested a lot of time into this game, and so I plan on playing the game for at least until RTA drops, and see how that unrolls. If I end up seeing that it's very unfun and I'm not interested in the game, I may stop one of my accounts, because I'm currently playing 2 accounts, and it's definitely a lot of work, as well as creating daily content for 3 different channels. It's a lot of work, and so I may dial it back if RTA is less fun and maybe only play 1 account. So that'll be it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you for the next time.